your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for a look at what made headlines this past week. Lethbridge's Chief of Police, Shaheen Medizadeh, will have to undergo a misconduct hearing next month. It stems from a 2022 complaint that alleges the chief violated a public health order relating to cohorts during the COVID-19 pandemic by taking a civilian member out for lunch, and that he denied culpability when he was confronted by the complainant, and that he brought discredit to the Lethbridge Police Service by participating in a news conference about holding LPS employees accountable for violating public health orders when he wasn't following them himself. The original investigation identified 16 allegations, but 10 were either time-barred under the Police Act or the complainants did not supply enough as evidence. The remaining 6 allegations were dismissed as frivolous, vexatious, and lacking an evidentiary basis. However, after the complainant appealed to the Law Enforcement Review Board, the LERB directed the Lethbridge Police Commission to conduct a hearing on the 3 allegations we mentioned. The hearing will be held in the Culver Room at Lethbridge City Hall, April 17th at 9:30 a.m. You know, it's beginning to happen a little too often in our city. 2 more youths on their way to school, along with an adult, were hit by a car. This latest incident occurred Tuesday morning around 7:45 in the south of the city. BCN's Hari Echavarria was on the scene and has the details.
Lethbridge Police Service responded to a report of a pedestrian collision where 3 people were struck by a vehicle in 3rd Avenue with 17th Street South.
That were actually in the crosswalk when the collision happened. One was struck and one was also hit by the vehicle or ran over by the vehicle, a little bit less severe. 2 of the 3 were transported to the hospital, where I believe one of them is going to be admitted to the hospital with serious injuries. It was a male driver.
Holy Spirit Catholic School Division reported the incident involved Holy Spirit students and a staff member. Meanwhile, classmates expressed concern about recent traffic incidents involving students.
A car hit one of my friends that is my classmate and her brother too.
And both in the hospital right now.
Yeah, they are both.
Yeah. He has something in the head, but now it's
and in the foot, I think.
People should be careful when they are crossing the road.
So you need to be careful when you drive.
2 months ago, in January, another collision occurred in the same area, involving 3 elementary school students, resulting in serious injuries for one of them.
Unfortunately, we see this often, too often, where vehicles, as well as pedestrians, they need to be paying attention to their surroundings, the time of day. We believe, the sun may have been a factor in this collision. When they're crossing a street, they need to ensure that the vehicles on the road have stopped and that they see them, wave at them, point at them, ensure that eye contact has been made. And not just one vehicle, specifically in this case, there's 2 lanes. So technically there could be 4 vehicles coming from, 2 separate directions. So we got to make sure each vehicle in each lane is stopped to, make it the safest way that they can cross. And obviously for the drivers, the same thing. They got to be paying attention to the surroundings. They got to be, making sure they're not on their phones or doing other things that are distracting them from what's happening around them.
For Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echavarria.
There are many causes of homelessness. Addiction, mental health, and economic issues are the main reasons that lead to many people to live on the streets. On Thursday, during a session of Southern Alberta Council on Public Affairs, or SACPA, Dr. Yael Belanger, professor of political science at the University of Lethbridge, spoke on a topic titled, "What Story Do We Create About the Homeless?" He explained the importance of the community's perspective on homelessness.
Are important because they influence how we respond politically, the type of policies we put in place, the type of interventions we develop. When we talk about the point in time count and people living a chronic lifestyle, that doesn't take into account the invisible homeless in town. So for every one individual that's living on the street in a chronic condition, we assume that there's roughly 3 other individuals in the city that are living either in transitional homelessness or situational homelessness. That means that on any one day here in Lethbridge, we could have between 1,200 and 1,500 homeless individuals. Unfortunately, we tend to just focus on those who live on the street, and that is where the title "The Homeless" comes from. We have taken a very large community of roughly 1,500 people and distilled it down to the 70 or the 80 that we see on a daily basis, and that's incredibly problematic.
According to Stats Canada, in 2023, more than 118,000 people experienced homelessness in an emergency shelter compared to less than 106,000 in 2022. After the break, we give you updates on the federal election and what the party leaders are up to. Stay with us. After just 4 days on the campaign trail, Liberal leader Mark Carney stopped campaigning Thursday to head to Ottawa to call a meeting of the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee. They met to discuss U.S. President Donald Trump's automotive tariffs. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne told reporters he wants workers to know, quote, "We have your back," while making sure the government builds a made-in-Canada supply chain. Trump's 25% tariffs on all automobile imports to the U.S. start next week, and the president has since threatened Canada and the European Union with even stiffer tariffs if they work together to do economic harm to America.
Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect, including of our sovereignty. We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada. We will protect our workers and our industries during this difficult period. But above all, we will build a new Canadian economy. We will build Canada strong.
But earlier in the week, Carney campaigned that his government would use revenues from tariffs on American goods to support workers affected by U.S. tariffs.
We're acting to protect workers by using every dollar that we collect from retaliatory tariffs to go to workers. We are not changing the transfers to the provinces. We are not changing transfers to individuals. We are proud, and this is a huge difference between us and the Conservatives.
Carney also announced a $2 billion fund to protect manufacturing jobs affected by tariffs, as well as a plan to build more auto parts in Canada. Both the Liberals and Conservatives are promising to remove the GST on new homes. The Liberals to the tune of homes up to $1 million in value. But on Tuesday, Tory leader Pierre Poilievre went a step further, announcing he would cut the GST all the way to $1.3 million homes. The day before that, Poilievre promised a tax cut to the lowest personal income tax rate.
Canada First Conservatives will cut income taxes by 15% for the average worker or $2,000 for the average couple. This is a tax cut for seniors who are drawing their pension or retirement income. They will pay, on average, 15% less.
Poilievre also announced Wednesday that Conservatives would allow working seniors to earn up to $34,000 tax-free, an increase of $10,000 from the current level, while also allowing seniors to keep their RRSP accounts active for an additional 2 years. Meantime, the federal New Democrats are rolling out their tax plan, announcing anyone making less than $178,000 would not pay taxes on the first $19,500 they earn, for an annual savings of $505. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh also announced cutting GST from certain items and ways to help seniors.
We want to take the GST permanently off of your monthly bills that are essential, so that would be your internet, your cell phone, your home heating, and take it off of daily necessities like grab-and-go groceries, so like a rotisserie chicken at the grocery store, and children's clothing. And then for seniors and people living with disabilities, we know that the impact of things getting more expensive is going to hit them even harder. So we want to plan to lift up seniors. So we want to double the disability credit, so the disability benefit, and that disability benefit needs to be increased. We want to double it. And then we want to increase the GIS. That's going to help a lot of seniors lift them out of poverty by increasing the GIS.
As U.S. tariffs begin to impact Canada's economy, many Canadians are looking at the upcoming election as an opportunity to choose a leader that will stand up to Trump and put Canada first. But according to John Buchan, Tree 3 Consulting CEO and political and business strategist, Trump and his tariffs are not the main election issues.
I think the tariff war so far is more about posturing than actual harm. I think Trump's used it well as a negotiating tactic. The reality is, if fully implemented, it would be very damaging to his economy and his markets. So I think he's using it as a good tactic to apply pressure for what he's going to see as a better trade deal. I think the reality is we need to grow our economy. So our biggest problems are actually GDP per capita, slow growth, productivity, wages, housing. So I think that these are the main issues of the election, but I do understand that in the media, in the mainstream media, and in a lot of the minds of Canadians, tariffs are the number one thing. But again, I think that the best way to stand up to Trump is by growing our economy and making it as strong as possible. So then when we do have threats, we're not so panicked, because in the last 10 years, we've been very, very stagnant.
Beijing's ambassador to Canada, Wang Di, says China is interested in stepping up trade with Ottawa as the U.S. continues to pursue a global trade war. Wang says Washington should not force Canada to choose between U.S. and China because that would further destabilize the global economy.
I think the international community should stand up together against this kind of behavior. We know that for many, many years, Canada has been a champion of free trade and multilateralism. And as you know, China's consistent position is that we advocate trade multilateralism, or what we call economic globalization. So I think at this point of time, all countries in the world, including China and Canada, should stand together to uphold the flag of multilateralism.
Last week, in response to Canadian tariffs against Chinese-made electric vehicles and steel, China hit back with 100% tariffs on canola products and 25% on seafood. Currently, the tariffs only affect canola oil and meal, but the CEO of Real Agriculture says they might eventually hit seeds, too.
You know, we've seen a drop in the price if you look at the futures market or some of the cash bids that are out there. And it has farmers really questioning, hey, wait a minute here, and trying to draw connections. Like, how did this happen? And this all happened because of tariffs on Chinese EVs coming into the country. Those tariffs were put on Chinese EVs coming into Canada, basically working in cooperation with the Americans, where there was a real concern about Chinese EVs coming into the North American market through Canada into the U.S. So as a Canada-U.S. partner, Canada made the decision to move ahead with that. And now, kind of once again, this feels like deja vu, Canada caught in the middle here between China and the Americans.
During a meeting with Liberal leader Mark Carney, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says he told her privately that there will be no cap on Alberta's oil and gas emissions. But now the party leader is saying there will be an emissions cap. To talk more about this and the importance of this federal election is Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf, who sat down with BCN's Jeanette Rocher.
This election is incredibly important to Alberta's economy and to Alberta's future. We have been struggling with a federal Liberal government for many years that continually tries to slow down or stop altogether our oil and gas economy and make it more difficult, continually reaching into provincial jurisdiction, which we tell them time again don't do, and we have to fight them in court, and we inevitably win. And we do unfortunately have a long list of federal leaders that come to Alberta, promise certain things here or say them quietly to us, and then they go say something different when they get back to Ottawa. So we hope Albertans are paying attention, and we hope Canadians are paying attention and vote for a government that actually puts Canada and all Canadians first instead of just their own political interests.
I think it was actually the same day that they flipped that. I believe it was his environment minister that, that sort of went publicly on the other side of the country saying, actually, no. So Nathan, do you believe fellow politicians, when they suddenly change their mind on these issues at election time, particularly when for decades they have been maybe like for carbon taxes and against building pipelines?
Yeah, I don't. And I don't think any Canadians do. It's what gives politicians, all colors, all stripes, bad name. When you say one thing in election time, you say something different. I know it's something that I would ask them to look at. It's very important to remain consistent in the face of potentially some pushback. I know I've had challenges, whether I talk about issues that are important to Lethbridge, but if it's been a platform promise, I've got to stay consistent and say the same thing from when I was first elected 6 years ago to today. And I would hope that people would pay attention if federal politicians are changing their tune after decades writing books about carbon taxes and reducing emissions and then promising to go a different direction. I find it a little bit hard to believe, and I'm sure many of your watchers do as well.
Now, Premier Smith actually mentioned the possibility of a referendum if these 9 demands are not met. So she sounds pretty serious. So to what degree are you hearing rumblings about Alberta separation?
Well, we are hearing rumblings, certainly. And we are, I believe, the Premier very serious to take our lead from Albertans, which is why we've got legislation to allow for citizen-led referendum. And if those issues are important to enough Albertans, they can move that forward, and we want to listen to that. We're proud to be part of Canada. We want jurisdictional guidelines to be followed, and we want people to work together. But when Alberta consistently is taken for granted, consistently sees our resources and our wealth transferred to other regions of the country against our wishes and not reinvesting in Alberta, that's hard on the people of Alberta. So we really hope that a government will be elected in Ottawa that works for all Canadians, no matter where they live, and shows that equality that we're so proud of when we wear the red-white flag and watch the Olympics and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Very patriotic times these days, for sure. One thing we can't get away from right now seems to be the talk of tariffs, and the tariff wars continue with the U.S. and now with China, meaning that Alberta canola farmers are looking at 100% tariffs. So the Premier had mentioned the possibility of selling canola to oil companies for use in biofuels. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is a great initiative. When you're faced with challenges, which will result in a very difficult time selling to one of the largest economies in the world, we have to find other solutions and other answers. And this is one where we think there's a great opportunity. Albertan companies are very innovative. And while, of course, our farmers, ranchers don't want to have to find new markets, they will do what they need to do to continue to make sure that we prosper as an economy. And selling for biodiesel, biofuels is a great alternative. And maybe it fills the gap for a short period of time, maybe it fills the gap for a long period of time. But making sure that we have diverse avenues to different markets so we're not restricted when one or two choose to do something like this, I think that's the best path forward.
Nathan, how well do you think Alberta is positioned to get through a tariff war with the U.S.?
Well, we're all going to feel it in many different ways, but I believe that Alberta is amongst the best position for provinces. We've already seen our leader do a tremendous amount of work, and at least for now, the promise is that if energy is taxed, it'll be at a much lesser rate than the 25%. And we're hopeful that we can alleviate those tariffs altogether. Beyond that, we've seen a great resilience from our ag industry and other machinery and manufacturing industries. We've got more work to do. We hope that cooler heads will prevail and the integrated nature of our market will allow for good talks, good negotiations so that we can de-escalate this and work to better both Alberta's economy and the U.S. states' economies. They're heavily reliant on a lot of products out of Alberta.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith was in Florida once again Thursday and once again faced criticism for it. This time it was to pay a visit to right-wing podcaster Ben Shapiro and go on his show. She says she's doing this to appeal to a Republican audience to see if they can help convince President Trump to be more lenient on the tariffs. Smith told the legislature Wednesday that she is being unjustly criticized for heading south to try to defuse an escalating trade war.
They want this lady and Alberta to just sit down and shut up. Well, here is my response to that. I will not be silent. Alberta will not be silent. We will not be pushed around and called traitors for merely having the courage to actually do something about our nation's and province's predicament other than merely indulging in self-righteous tantrums. And I, for one, will never be silenced by the party in Ottawa that has sold out our beloved province for the last 10 years with the help of their NDP collaborators. I have and I always will put Albertans first. And until this danger to Alberta and our economy is passed, they're going to have to roll me off in a stretcher before I will stop fighting for our province and our people. So they can call me and my caucus, whatever name in the dictionary they want. As long as Albertans know that we are fighting for them and their families, we could care less what the members opposite or Liberal politicians in Ottawa have to say about us, because Albertans expect their Premier and government to always put Albertans first and lead them through this storm with fearless determination. Our government's advocacy has made a massive difference for Albertans and for Canadians, and that is a fact. But now we have another tariff deadline looming on April the 2nd, and I am now off to the U.S. yet again to try and speak to Americans, this time through the second largest podcaster in the world, whose audience is made up of exactly the people we need to persuade to convince their president to change course on tariffs against Canada. And what does Team Carney want me to do? They want me to abandon my post, remain in Alberta, and do absolutely nothing to defend our province.
Smith's criticizers from Alberta's opposition and beyond say she is being far too chummy with far-right influencers who wish to do Canada harm. For his part, Ben Shapiro is criticized by the left for mocking Canada as, quote, a silly country, and has mused it could become a 51st state. But according to Smith, he has a wide circle of influence that could help change the minds of Trump administration officials on tariffs. NDP MLA for Calgary Mountain View, Kathleen Ganley, was in Lethbridge and stopped by our studios Thursday to sit down and chat. We discussed a number of topics, including her thoughts on Smith's Florida visit. Let's talk more about Premier Smith's trip to the States. She's going on Ben Shapiro's show, so let me hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts are, so she's not even going on his show. She's going to participate in a fundraiser for him. So, you know, her claim is that she's going down there, you know, to somehow advocate for Alberta, but that's not what she's doing at all. She's going down there to help a right-wing extremist, a known racist, someone who has said that our country, our whole country of Canada, should be annexed and should become essentially a colony of the United States. She's going down to help him fundraise. So that's, I mean, that's really, really troubling. And she's spending taxpayer money to do that. I don't think that the average Albertan would agree with that.
Ganley also weighed in on the Premier's meeting with Liberal leader Mark Carney and the list of 9 demands Smith made, plus her concerns with the future of the Grassy Mountain coal mining project. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith recently had a meeting in Edmonton where she made a list of demands that must be addressed within 6 months of the new Prime Minister being installed to avoid a, quote, national unity crisis. Can you tell me a little bit more about this and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, I think that our Premier here in Alberta should be acting in the interest of Albertans. And so what Albertans are concerned about is their cost of living, their jobs, our economy here, their health care. And instead what we have is a Premier who spends her time threatening people, threatening national unity crisis. Albertans are Canadians too. And I would say my biggest concern with Smith's position is that, you know, she's threatening and playing politics when she should be standing up for Albertans.
Wow. And then the fate of the Grassy Mountain coal mining project, let's talk about that, because that's now in the hands of the Alberta Energy Regulator. So how do you feel the outcome will be, and do you feel it will be a positive outcome?
Well, I definitely don't want to presuppose what the AER is going to do, but what I will say is this project is a huge concern. So this is, I mean, it exists at all because the UCP went back and forth with respect to the policy on coal, and now they've gone back again. So they've moved one way, they've moved the other way. During the election, they promised, don't worry, it's not going to happen. We're never going to let it happen. And now they've turned around and they've made reg changes. They literally made reg changes while a matter was before the AER in order to ensure that the project could go forward. So I think this is extremely problematic. It's a government that's not acting in the interest of Albertans and that's basically circumventing its own regulatory process.
Alberta NDP MLA for Calgary Mountain View, Kathleen Ganley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me.
The Alberta government has announced an investment of $800 million over 8 years in a cancer innovation partnership with Siemens Healthineers and the Alberta Cancer Foundation. The investment looks to help replace and update equipment, establish a medical research and innovation fund, and shorten wait times for cancer care and treatment.
First, our partnership will ensure the replacement and growth of equipment, software, and maintenance services used in diagnostic imaging. This includes introducing brand new technologies that are more effective and will significantly reduce wait times for patients. Consider this: a new artificial intelligence-enabled treatment unit could shorten the time from consultation to treatment from 2 weeks to 2 hours. With the value partnership in place, visits to emergency departments for oncology-related cases could be reduced by 30%, and wait times between a patient's initial consultation to receiving a diagnosis have the potential to be reduced by 50%. When every second counts, that difference could save lives, and we know it will.
Alberta is inviting its residents to participate in an online survey to help inform the implementation of steps the province is taking to strengthen food safety in licensed child care facilities. This is in response to an E. coli outbreak that hit Calgary child care facilities in the fall of 2023. The province responded by establishing an external review panel, and a final report was published in the summer of 2024. The report outlined 12 main recommendations and 27 sub-recommendations. If implemented, some recommendations may also affect the broader food service industry, including food establishments. With less than 100 days until the official kickoff of the greatest outdoor show on earth, the Calgary Stampede announced that Canadian-born country music superstar Shania Twain will be the 2025 Calgary Stampede's parade marshal. Twain is a 5-time Grammy winner with more than 100 million albums sold worldwide. The Calgary Stampede runs July 4th to the 13th. Coming up after the break, BCN's Paul Arthur talks with realtor Anne French with Grassroots Realty about the booming real estate market in southern Alberta and what is causing the rise of house prices. And if you're watching us online, that full interview is available on our YouTube channel.